Paris, 1789. The city writhes beneath the weight of revolution, its streets choked with the acrid scent of burning effigies and the iron tang of fresh blood. The air shudders with the voices of the damned, screams of the desperate, the fervent chants of the righteous, the distant rhythmic tolling of executioners' steel. Shadows stretch long beneath the flickering glow of torches, dancing like specters over the crumbling facades of a world devouring itself. But she does not see it. Within the suffocating confines of a dimly lit atelier, Geneviève Rousseau moves like a specter of her own design, trapped in a prison of canvas and pigment. The revolution may consume kings and paupers alike, but it holds no dominion here. Her kingdom is the easel, the brush, the failing stroke of genius that eludes her grasp like a cruel specter whispering just beyond perception. She paints, yet nothing breathes. Her figures lie dead beneath the weight of her mediocrity. Her colors wilt like autumn's last dying leaves. She clenches her jaw, her breath shallow, teeth grinding as the realization gnaws at her. She is nothing. Her art will fade, unnamed and unloved, as if she had never existed at all. In frustration, she flings the brush from her grasp, its bristles stained with the feeble attempts of a forgotten soul. A trembling hand seeks the solace of a half-drained bottle, the bitter wine pooling in her mouth, warming her throat with a fleeting numbness. The world outside trembles on the precipice of chaos, but within these walls, only her failure remains. She drinks deeply, each gulp another desperate attempt to drown the silent judgment of the canvases that surround her. The dim candlelight flickers, shadows creeping along the warped wooden beams like silent witnesses to her descent. The wine is cheap, acrid, but its warmth numbs the cold fingers of doubt clawing at her mind. Her hand trembles as she reaches for another brush, but instead, her fingers knock against the edge of the table. The world tilts. A hollow gasp escapes her lips as she watches in horror. Her finest pigment, her most precious blue, the very soul of her work, tumbles forward. The glass jar shatters against the floor. A flood of deep, unnatural azure spills across the aged wooden planks, pooling like a wound torn open in the flesh of the world. It spreads with an almost unnatural slowness, thick and hypnotic, shimmering in the dim light as though it drinks the very essence of the room. Her breath catches that blue, richer, darker than she remembers. It moves, it pulses. Her shaking hands hover over the mess, as if she could will time to reverse, undo the recklessness of her drunken stupor. Months of savings gone in a single moment of carelessness. She lets out a strangled, broken laugh, a sound brittle as drying paint. What cruel irony that the only stroke of originality she had managed this night was the unmaking of her own ambitions. And yet, she cannot look away. The color, the impossible, abyssal color, clings to her skin as she reaches toward it, drawn by some unseen compulsion. Her fingers tremble, hovering just above the slick, glistening surface. A voice, faint, whispering, curling at the edges of her thoughts, calls to her. It is not the wine. It is something else. The room is thick with the stifling scent of oil and stale wine, the air stagnant with the weight of her exhaustion. The flickering candle casts restless shadows upon the warped wooden beams, grotesque specters that stretch and coil like unseen entities lurking just beyond perception. Her breath slows, uneven, as the world blurs into a fevered haze. Sleep does not come gently. It takes her like a drowning tide, dragging her into an abyss of restless half-dreams where color bleeds unnaturally, and figures from her failed paintings twist and turn in the dim recesses of her mind. She does not remember falling asleep, only the suffocating silence that swallowed her whole. When her eyes flutter open, the sun is already sinking behind the distant rooftops, its dying light spilling through the cracked panes in sickly, burnt orange streaks. Her body aches from the unnatural position in which she had collapsed, her limbs leaden with the weight of fatigue and something else, something unseen, something watching. With a groan, she pulls herself upright, eyes darting toward the ruined pigment on the floor. The blue stain remains, but it has changed. It is darker now, deeper, as though it has sunk into the wood itself, drinking the life from it. She swallows hard, shoving down the growing unease curling in the pit of her stomach. No time for madness. She needs paint. She needs money. The last few coins in her purse are barely enough to sustain her, let alone replace the pigment she lost. With a shaking breath, she throws on her tattered shawl and steps into the streets of Paris, the world outside humming with a restless, fevered energy. The scent of sweat, smoke, and impending violence clings to the narrow alleyways, where beggars and radicals murmur beneath their breath. But she does not care. She is blind to the storm gathering at the edges of history, her mind consumed by one singular thought. How will she afford more paint? Her boots scuff against the uneven cobblestones as she walks, stomach hollow with hunger, fingers twitching with the phantom touch of a brush against canvas. There must be a way, a commission, a favor, anything. Then, as if conjured by her own desperation, he appears, a man, standing at the far end of the dimming street, just beyond the reach of the dying light. His silhouette is wrong, too still, too sharply defined against the wavering dusk, as though he exists just outside the bounds of reality itself. His clothing is dark, antiquated, a style that feels at once familiar and utterly alien. And though his mouth does not move, she hears him speak. "For your masterpiece, mademoiselle." Her blood runs cold. In his gloved hand, a small glass jar, blacker than night, darker than the void between the stars. The moment the brush touches the canvas, it begins. Not like before, not the hesitance, the self-doubt, the frustration that had plagued her every stroke. No, this time she knows. She sees it, clear, perfect, as though the image was always there, buried within the fabric of the world itself, waiting for her to uncover it. Her hands move with inhuman certainty, each motion swift and precise. The bristles glide effortlessly, guided by something beyond her own mind. The hunger in her stomach, the lingering haze of wine, the distant echo of revolution. It all vanishes. There is only the art, the work, the act of creation. The paint flows too smoothly, too easily, like blood from an open wound. The blackest black, deeper than any night, so absolute it seems to devour the candlelight around it, and within that abyss, she carves shapes, details so intricate that they should not be possible by human hands. Faces, twisted and writhing, contorted in silent screams, eyes that blink when she does not look directly at them. She does not stop, she does not breathe. Hours pass, or is it days? Time is meaningless, she must finish. The passion, the purpose consumes her, setting her veins ablaze with an unholy fervor. This is not mere paint, it is something more, something alive, and it wants to be seen. Her vision blurs, her hands tremble, her body frail and starved begins to betray her. But the painting is not yet done. Her breath turns ragged, her chest rising and falling in uneven gasps. Her fingers ache, cramped into claws around the brush, and yet she pushes forward until she can give no more. The brush slips from her grasp, darkness rushes in, and then the nightmare begins. The first thing she notices is the silence, not the quiet of an empty room, nor the peaceful stillness of slumber. This is different, a silence so profound, so suffocating that it feels like a living thing. She is not alone. The air is thick with the scent of burning flesh, of rot, of something unnatural. Shadows pulse and writhe at the edges of her vision, shifting, stretching, curling into figures that do not belong in this world. She tries to move, but her body does not obey. Before her, the world distorts. Colors bleed where they should not. Reality warps and shatters like a cracked mirror. And then the shapes become clearer. Faces, mouths twisted in agony, hands reaching, grasping, clawing for salvation that will never come. A great, wailing mass of suffering stretching endlessly before her, a realm of torment she has never seen but somehow remembers. Hell. She screams, but the sound is swallowed whole by the abyss. Something moves in the distance, too vast, too monstrous to comprehend. Eyes, so many eyes, watching, studying, a presence beyond reason, beyond human understanding. It does not approach. It does not need to. Its mere existence is enough to suffocate, to drive lesser minds into madness. And then she hears them, the voices, soft at first, a whisper in the black, then rising, growing, pleading, crying, begging. They speak in tongues unknown, in agony unfathomable, but she understands. You have seen us. You have freed us. You have joined us. A hand, not her own, grasps her wrist. She jerks awake. The room is cold, the candles burn down to dying embers. Her breath is ragged, her body slick with sweat. The taste of ash lingers on her tongue. She turns her gaze, and her painting stares back. The faces are there, the screaming faces, and in the center of it all, staring directly at her, a pair of eyes she does not recognize. Her own.